What's up, guys and gals, and everyone in between, to yet another episode of Minecraft Therapy, the podcast. Today, I want to talk to y'all about being Asian American, because that's what I am, and I thought it'd be an interesting topic. So, that's what we're going to talk about. I don't know why that decided to pop into my mind. I think it's just because, I don't know, I'm Asian. So that's something that I think about often, is my identity. And I think a lot of other Asian Americans struggle with identity. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like that's a common thread, because I think specifically Asian Americans have a very interesting place in the culture today, if you will. So yeah, let's just dive into talking about that. I'm going to divide this into two parts. First part's going to be talking about family, how Asian Americans' families might be different than your normal classic starter pack American family. You know, you got a special with the DLC Asian American family. You get some special buffs and debuffs. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, that's the first part. And then the second part, I will just talk about social life, being Asian American, socially, whatever that means. But yeah, let's just dive right in. So I think, for me, at least, and this is all going to be talking from my experience, but so, of course, I don't want to generalize, but I do feel like I'm your pretty garden variety, vanilla, default pack Asian American. If you opened up a pack of trading cards and you got me, you'd probably see like uncommon or common as my rarity type. So yeah, but yeah, so I think one of the most important things that define the Asian American identity is that your family is really freaking anal about education, because I know mine was, and I'm sure we all got our stories about Asian parents yelling. That's why there's that whole meme about, oh, get the A's, you get the B, I'm gonna beat your ass. So yeah, oh, I have iron, haha. So yeah, I know that was sort of true for me growing up, for better or for worse. I went to mad prep school. So if you don't know what prep school is, it means you're not Asian, first of all. Nope, just kidding. I will never gatekeep anyone. We're all in this together without Asian on Asian violence. But anyway, yeah, so prep centers are these places where you go and prepare yourself to take some frickin' tests, the most common of which might be the SAT. So you probably know prep centers for prepping little Asian boys and girls and everyone in between for the SAT. But also in New York, basically every school you need to get into in New York, or semi-good school that Asian people know about, you have to take a test to get into. So for my middle school, I had to take a test to get into that. For my high school, I had to take a test to get into that. So I don't know. I think maybe that's, and I think in China too, if you want to get into a good college, it's 100% the test. So I think maybe Asian society values tests a lot. I know in the middle centuries, you had to take a test to become a civil worker or some shit in China. So maybe that's where it stems from. But yeah, education is really important in Asian culture, and I'm not saying it's other cultures also don't find it important, but I think especially so in Asian culture, in my experience of it. So I don't know. I think that has some pros and cons. Well, let's first talk about why that is. Why do Asians value education so much? I sort of said it earlier, but it's sort of their way, the way they see they can easily move up in society. And I'm not the first person who said that. You've probably heard that before, but Uh, yeah, I think it's because, like, I don't know, maybe like other Asian people told our parents that like education's the way you move up in society, and then that's just sort of ingrained in like Asian people's perception of how to like be better in society. So yeah, I mean, I know in my experience it was sort of like at times it was pretty rough. Like my parents, I respect them a lot, and I am now grateful that they emphasize education a lot because now I'm smart and I went to Stanford and blah blah blah. But it was rough there for a while, and I did not enjoy it for a while. I remember like in like the fourth grade in New York, you have to like take these like state standardized tests. I'm sure like every state has them, but like in New York, you take like at the end of the year, you take these standardized tests in English and math, and it's just sort of like measure like where you're at. And the year before in the third grade, I got a perfect score on both those tests. I was like hella smart, and my parents were like so proud. They were like, "Yo, our child is okay, and we do not have to disown him yet." But then the next year was when I sort of got into the disowning zone. So on the test, you can either be rated a 1, which means like far below standards, 2, which is below standards, 3, which is meets standards, or 4, which is exceeds standards. So in the fourth grade, I got a 4 on the math section, but I got a 3 on the English section, which means I only met the standards. I did not exceed the standards. And I remember my parents got like hella mad at me. And I was like, I just remember like I came home and I was like, oh fuck. And then my dad saw it and he just like flipped the F out. He was like, what the fuck is this? No, he didn't say that, but like he said it in his way that I don't remember anymore because I repressed those memories. But like he was like, what the fuck is this? We didn't raise no dumbass bitch kid. What the fuck is this 3? You meeting standards. What the fuck? And they gave me so much grief about it. They like yelled at me for so long. I remember like being in the car waiting in front of like someone's house, and my dad was just laying into me like, you got a fucking 3. No, he didn't say the F word, but like he said it in like a mean way that made me cry. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. Parenting is hard, so like I don't want to give them any grief about it. They're immigrants and like they had to move to a new country, and I know they just wanted the best for me, blah blah blah. But like shit, that was a rough that was not fun for me as like a 9-year-old to get yelled at. But that's sort of like the emphasis on education that I'm talking about, like they really emphasize that shit, and they were not joking around when it came to that. Holy shit, I don't want to die here. Yeah, they were not playing when it came to that fucking shit. So I don't know. That was like rough for me. And I'm not trying to like get pity or anything. That's just sort of an experience I think a lot of Asian Americans probably have. So like, yeah, like my entire life basically was about being good at these tests. Because like I said, in New York, like to get into the middle school and high school, it's like basically all test based. There are other schools, but like the schools my parents wanted me to get into, you had to like do good at a test to get in. So like there was that singular focus on like doing tests. Like I don't know, it's like like to get into those schools, they didn't care about your grades in school, they didn't care about whatever you did. It was literally just the test. So that's why like there was such the emphasis on the prep school, So you would go to these like 60-degree ass air conditioned, cold as hell prep centers, and do your worksheets and like do your practice tests. I don't want to die, so I'm just gonna dig up. But yeah, it was like, yo, sit here, do your tests. And I would do that like every weekend, every summer. And I don't know, it definitely helped me get into those schools, I think. But I didn't get to have fun summers. I don't know, because I just had to go do prep. And again, I don't want to blame my parents for anything, because I can only imagine how hard being a parent is. So even though maybe I would have done it differently, I mean, oh my, what are the chances? Holy fucking shit. Oh, no. Even though I might have done it differently, they did that. And I went to Stanford, so you could say it worked out in the end. But yeah, I think that just instilled in me the whole, like, that whole education emphasis, like, really instilled in me, like, a sense of pressure and, like, fear to, like, do well in class. And that was sort of stressful for me, because I remember, like, I would be, like, really afraid to, like, tell my parents I got below a 90 on a test, or, like, yeah, and that kind of pressure will fuck with you if you're, like, 10 years old. So that wasn't a good time. But I think, yeah, I don't know. So there's that pressure to get into the high schools, which I think a lot of Asian American people probably experience. And I think maybe, I don't know what that leads to, some shared trauma, I guess, between, like, all Asian American people, or at least people who force themselves to go to prep. And like I said, I'm sure lots of other races go to prep and stuff, but I'm just speaking from the Asian American perspective. Yeah, I don't know. That instills a source of camaraderie, trauma between all of us. Like, I never got to, like, have, like, that cool white person fun ass summer where, like, you just do nothing and, like, play baseball and eat apple pie, you know? That's what I imagine white people to do during their summers. But, like, you know, I just went to prep and I fucking studied for that SAT. Like, starting the 9th grade, I was, like, on that SAT grind. And yeah, I don't know. That's like I said, that led me to do better on the SAT than I would have otherwise, probably. But at the same time, it's like I felt like I was missing out on being a normal American kid, whatever that means. And when you're 10 and very impressionable and you want to fit in, that's not what you want. So there's that. But I think, so there was that. I think my parents sort of chilled out once they got into high school, because they saw that I was putting the pressure on myself, and they didn't need to apply it to me anymore, if that makes sense. Like, they saw that I was stressed out enough about not getting good grades where they didn't need to stress me out further. I think that was just sort of catalyzed because, like, I had a mental breakdown where I, like, cried in front of my parents about, like, not getting a good grade in the 9th grade or something. And then they were like, oh shit, like, maybe we fucked this kid up. But I don't know. Yeah, so they sort of chilled out there. So I don't know. I think the Asian American emphasis on education, it has its good and bad things, like I already mentioned. Let's talk about, like, how that affects the Asian American identity, I guess. Besides, you know, the fact we're all fucking traumatized. I think it does, I don't know, it helps, it makes us better programmed to, like, just do fucking monotonous, boring ass tasks, I feel like. As stupid as that sounds, like, I don't know. We're good at that because we already spent, like, 8 years of our lives studying for a meaningless test. And so we don't need to ask why we're studying for the test. We don't need to, you know, think about life. We just know, okay, our parents told me to study for this test, so I'm gonna fucking do it. I feel like that's, like, a Chinese or Asian American thing too. It's like, you don't really question your parents that much. You just sort of say, hey, I'm gonna do this shit, and then you do it. So I don't know. Yeah, there's that. I think also in Asian American culture, there's a sort of segueing from that. There's a lot of, like, there's a big emphasis on, like, respect So, like, respect your parents. Sort of going along the same vein of, like, oh, I told you to fucking do this, so just do this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really... I think, at least from what I saw from my white people friends, they seem to, like, if they weren't friends with their parents, they at least seem to be close enough to their parents where they were willing to, like, talk with them about friends, or if school's not going well, or, I don't know, like, crack the occasional joke now and then. I, like, never did that shit with my parents. Like, my parents and I have a very, at least back then, we had a very, like, business type relationship, I want to say. Like, you know, I wouldn't really talk to them. I would just, you know, they would say, like, how's your day? I would be like, good. And that would be it. I wouldn't really feel comfortable talking with them about my friends, or, like, what's going on in school, if anything's not going well, you know? It was just very, very formal. Then there was no really, like, questioning my parents when it came to shit. So, like I said, like, they fucking told me to, like, study for this test, so I fucking did it. And they, you know, they fucking told me, this is the school you want to go to, and I was like, lit. I'm gonna do that. There's, like, the sense of, like, just do it because I told you to is, like, very apparent in my parents, and I suspect a lot of Asian American parents and that type of family. And I don't know, I feel like my parents were pretty strict. Like, they told me, hey, don't date until you graduate from college. Like, hey, don't stay out past, like, 10 p.m. Which is rough when you're, you know, that age and you want to date and your hormones are all swirling around. I feel like that does lead to, like, some messed up, repressed ass Asian kids out there. And I don't know if that's so good, you know? I can see where they're coming from. Like, I think my parents always said, like, oh, when you grow up, you'll, like, understand our point of view. And I hate to say it, but I sort of do. I remember back then I was thinking, like, no, fuck you guys. You guys are mean to me. I'm never going to understand your point of view. I hate to say it, but I sort of do understand their point of view now. That's not to say I would necessarily raise my kids in the same way, but I do see their point of view maybe, which is that, I don't know, like, they're new in this country, they're immigrants, they don't really know how the game is played, they don't have all the connections that your average white, rich-ass American family might, and they see that, like, I don't know, like, studying and getting good grades is the way to go. And I think my parents grew up in, like, pretty rough times in China. So, considering all that, I can see why they would want me to not fuck up and stay out late because, oh, you might be doing drugs, or date because, oh, it might distract you from school. I definitely wouldn't raise my kids in the same way, but I can see, considering my parents' background, why those thoughts might come into their mind, especially because America is a new place for them, basically. You know, they didn't grow up in America. They're immigrants, so they don't really understand. As Aaron Burr said in Hamilton, they don't understand how the sausage gets made. And when you don't know how the sausage gets made, you don't want to fuck up the sausage, otherwise you might get some rat in there. So, yeah, there's that. At the same time, that does fuck up Asian kids, I think. A lot of Asian kids are repressed because their parents are really strict on them, and then they go to college and they're like, oh, shit, alcohol exists? Which I sort of had my own experience with, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, and it's, like, not good, because then when you repress shit for so long, it just all comes out in a burst. And that burst might not be good. And I think also it leads to a lot of identity questions that Asian kids have, because they don't get to make the mistakes that they maybe should, you know? Like, if you date at 16 and you make a mistake, then guess what? You won't make that mistake when you're 25. But if you never date and you make that first mistake when you're 25, you're kind of fucked. You're kind of fucked, buddy. So, yeah, you know? I think I can understand why Asian parents are really strict, because they don't want their kids to make mistakes. But I think being a human being, I think part of being a human being and growing up from a kid to an adult is making mistakes and learning from them. So there's that. I wouldn't, yeah. I don't know what to say to all the Asian kids out there who are going through that. Like, just know that, I don't know, that experience you're living through is yet another life experience that'll hopefully teach you something. And I think it taught me that, I think looking back on it now, it definitely it teaches me that, I don't know, there's more than one perspective on life, right? Because back then, I hated my parents for not letting me do stuff. But I think now, it helps me realize, like, oh, I can understand why they're coming from that, and like, see their point of view better, having gone through that myself. And, I didn't fucking get addicted to drugs, I guess, which probably wouldn't have happened anyway, but that's a bonus. I think another thing with Asian families are they're not as emotional with their kids, just like, I don't know, my mom didn't start saying I love you until I got to college, and my dad probably hasn't said that since I was born. But I don't know, like, I don't begrudge them that, because I know how they grew up. I know at least, like, how my dad grew up. His dad probably didn't say that to him that much, so I can understand why it might be hard for him. So I don't begrudge, and I know they love me. I don't need them to say it to me, so I don't begrudge them that. But that is interesting, because when you're sick, now that I'm, like, old, I can understand, oh, they love me, they just don't know how to express it, or they have a hard time expressing it. But when you're 10, I think that might fuck with you. I don't know. Maybe that's just, like, me wanting to be an American more, want to be a white kid more, but, like, I don't know. I just remember, like when I was 5, I remember in daycare, this kid, in daycare, when his parents got there, like, he would jump up and hug them, and then when my dad got there, that shit was not going down. So I don't know. I think a part of me wanted that, but I can understand now why they didn't say that. And I don't know. I think a pro of that is that even though they don't say I love you, my parents are still very family focused. I think family is the most important thing to them, and I can see that in the way they act versus just the words. So I think a good thing is that I think I was raised valuing family as well, which I think is a good thing. Yeah, it's good because it's very family focused, but it's not good because it's a hard time to get to that point of understanding where you can realize, oh, okay, this is why they're acting this way, because they do care about me. They just raised in a different culture than the normal American white culture that media is giving to me. So there's that.